Hi all, Fuzzy Barbarian here. I was going to move on from dual swords and do a build with a different weapon, but I couldn't. There was one more dual sword that I needed to check out, the Suikan and Heishi Shorinken. I don't want to say that again, so I'll just call it the Ken sword from now on. The reason I wanted to try out the Ken sword properly is because out of all dual swords, it's the one with the highest attack multiplier in the game. It also has a perk no other weapon in the game has, which is Onmyo magic damage bonus. So it's a dual sword meant to support a magic build, and it's the only weapon in the game meant for a magic build. That sounded like something worth looking into, so I did. Now, you guys know I prefer light armor builds, even though there really aren't any good light armor sets that can put out damage like some of the medium and heavier armor sets, but I still like to try and get the most out of light armor builds that I can. So, the challenge was to make a Ken sword wielding light armor magic build that would kick ass. Here's the first problem with that. There are no light armor sets that support magic. At least, there are none that come with set bonuses, but there are sets that support magic without bonuses, 3 in fact. Onmyo Mage's hunting gear is one, Onmyo Mage's Jo is the second, and Onmyo Mage's Suikan is the third. That's the one that looks like the mages with the pointy wizard hats. I'm not a fan of the style, so I've refashioned what you're seeing here, but I'm sure you've seen them in the game enough, so it's all good. The differences between all 3 magic sets are pretty small and relate mostly to how they protect against elemental attacks, and they give very minor protection at that, I've got to say. Both Jo and the hunting gear take a lot more points to equip though, and while they do give you a bit more toughness, mostly all they do is just add weight. I wanted to go as light as possible, because I wanted to get under 30% equipment weight to get the most out of an agility damage bonus of A+, so I went with the Suikan set. And that was my first hellish decision. It turns out the divine version of the Onmyo Mage's Suikan set is the rarest set in the game. I've gotten every set in the game, and this one was by far the most arduous out of all of them. It took forever, which is bizarre if you compare it to some of the really good armor sets in the game that you can get at the drop of a dime. I don't know what that's about. Anyway, after complaining about the game's drop rates for 2 days, I finally got the whole set. The process for getting it is a whole other video, but in short, you have to farm the pieces from multiple missions all in the Kinkai region. And the arms and legs come from the missing catalogue, the torso comes from the Demon of Mount Hai, the feet come from the Malefactors, head from the Twilight mission called the Best and the Worst, and also random pieces can very rarely drop from developer revenants in the Demon of Mount Hai. Yep, trust me, it's a major grind that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. I don't recommend doing it at all unless you want a light armor magic build that has a practically infinite living weapon like I'm going to show you here. Actually no, not even then. If you want the set, hit me up and I'll drop my revenant for you. I don't want anyone to have to grind like I had to get this set. Okay, so what's good about the Onmyo Mage's Suikan set other than being lightweight? Well, the headpiece gives you a perk that speeds up magic casting. The torso and legs buff your magic defense, or your defense based on magic. Your magic level, and the arms and feet add points to your Onmyo magic power. The first thing that had to go though was the headpiece. Faster Onmyo casting speed is great, sure, but you can get that from the mystic art called Awakening that's in the Onmyo magic skill tree. I don't know if that mystic art stacks with the hat or not, and I didn't test it. I doubt it does, but even if it does, it wouldn't have made a difference to my build because, well, the sword. Unfortunately, Ken's Onmyo magic damage bonus is not near as good as getting a bonus like change to attack skill or heart. I've got A+ magic damage bonus on this one, but it still didn't make enough of a difference to make the sword powerful, even though I've managed to get my Onmyo magic power to a ridiculous 769, or I did in my initial build at least. My roll on Ken is only a 6 slot sword though. I don't know if you can get a 7. I know I never have, and I've had a ton of these drops, so I'm guessing it only comes as a 6 slot variety, but I could be wrong on that. In any case, you can't add any other kind of damage bonus to this sword. The magic damage bonus is locked. Even with the highest attack multiplier in the game, that means this sword still can't be made to put out the kind of damage a sword like Shisho, the sword I've been using with my Justice Ministry builds, can. That's why I had to dump the Suikan headpiece. I needed to add more damage to the build in another way, and to do that, I decided to swap the headpiece for an Ogress mask. Doing so replaces the fast magic casting with an extra 20% fire damage. And you're probably wondering why fire damage. Okay, this is complicated to explain, but I'll give it a shot. We all know Windstorm is the most powerful dual sword attack. We also know Karajishi is the most powerful guardian spirit for buffing Windstorm's damage. But if we're Windstorming with Karajishi all day long, there's no point in using a magic build at all, because we already know magic damage bonus won't outdamage change to attack, nor will pumping points into magic help that as opposed to pumping them into skill and heart. That's because dual swords scale on skill first and heart second, but not at all on magic. But here's the thing. Onmyo magic doesn't just increase by putting points into magic, it also increases by putting points into spirit. So we can still achieve a magic build by shifting some points out of magic and putting more into skill, heart and spirit. I originally started this build with body of 8, heart of 33, stamina of 11, which is pretty standard, strength of 6, which is untouched, but skill of 99, magic of 99 and spirit of 99, and I didn't touch dexterity. I then dropped magic from 99 to 62 and spirit to 72, which allowed me to increase heart to 99 so that I could get more damage on the dual swords. To give you an idea of why I did that, Onmyo magic power starts at at least for me, started at a base of 133 on my character. You can increase that by 490 points simply by putting 99 points into magic. It'll increase by 100 with 99 into spirit, so 490 versus 100. Basically, you get one Onmyo magic power point for each spirit point. Now, the points you get for Onmyo magic reduce the higher the points you put into magic. For example, you first get 12 points for each magic point, then it goes down by 1 for each 10 you put in thereafter. In the end, you end up getting one Onmyo magic power point when you put in the very final 99th magic point. If you take that backwards, at 89 you get 2 points of Onmyo magic power, at 79 magic points you get 3 into your Onmyo magic power, at 69 you get 4, and so on. That's how it goes. So the peak is always at the end of each set of 10 digits. I found the sweet spot to be 61 magic and 72 spirit for this build at least, and obviously as I earn more points I'll put them in, but that's where it's at right now. If all that sounds too complicated, I understand that. In a nutshell, what it means is the more points you put in, the less benefit you get out of it. So you still get a benefit, but it shrinks the more points you allocate. So basically you get more points for the first 50 of magic than you'll get for the last 50, as an example. So by dropping a few points from magic and spirit and putting them into heart, which scales dual sword damage up, I managed to gain more damage without losing an equal amount on the magic and spirit side. Makes sense. Of course, those point numbers are based on many stat points that I have to allocate at my level, and my level's about 320 as I'm making this video. What I normally do when looking at builds is to use my maximum points, and then if I find a decent build, I then work backwards to see if it will stay decent when I have lower points. So if it does, then it gets a tick and I can move forward and say this is a decent build. If not, then I dump it and you guys never hear about it, and there's been a lot of those. Anyway, back to the build. To compensate for the magic points I diverted away, I picked the Guardian Spirit hi-nezumi, which adds another 75 magic power on its own. It also adds unlimited Onmyo too of 19%, because hi-nezumi is obviously a magic focused Guardian Spirit. If you don't know, unlimited Onmyo gives you more chance that when you cast a spell, it will be cast for free. So why choose hi-nezumi over Karajishi? That's a good question when we all know Karajishi is the undisputed king for skill-based attacks like Windstorm and God of Wind and so on. The answer to that is why I've gone with fire damage. There's no way to outdamage a typical Karajishi build with Windstorm or other skills. In fact, or maybe there is for some other skills, but definitely not for Windstorm. In fact, you can still use Karajishi with this build and do well enough. Despite a slight drop in damage numbers, it still takes the same amount of Windstorm activations to down bosses as, say, a comparable light armor build like Justice Ministry. But if you don't care too much about that, hi-nezumi offers something which Karajishi doesn't, and that's an A+ Amrita gauge rate, which is how fast Amrita charges your living weapons, and also A+ recovery rate, which is how much of an impact on charging your living weapon Amrita makes when you have your living weapon going. And right there is why this became a living weapon build over a Windstorm build. A really good living weapon build, in fact. So good that we can make our living weapon with this build practically infinite. It's not infinite, of course, because that would be a game bug, I think. But basically, 2 kills and we have a living weapon from scratch, or sometimes 1 single kill if it's a larger enemy, like a yokai Cyclops dude or something like that. Once we get our living weapon, it'll last for ages. All you have to do is get a kill here and there, and it will recover itself and keep going. And if you don't get that kill, if you run out, well, 1 or 2 kills later you'll have it back. Or if you can't do any of that, it's also optimized well enough that you can use a single small spirit stone to go from completely empty to living weapon activated, which is pretty amazing. So basically you can use your living weapon constantly with this build. And since we're going to have our living weapon a lot with this build, and with hi-nezumi being a fire-based spirit, that's why I've chosen to boost fire damage. Makes sense? With those boosts, it also makes sense to have fire on our weapon and as our primary elemental talisman. So that's what that is. One perk of this build is, unlike other living weapon builds, you don't need to use Pleiades talismans or extraction talismans to keep it going. 1 kill before it runs out is all you need, and that is awesome because that frees up your shortcuts for other things. Watch how quickly it charges from scratch. Watch how much it recovers from this single kill. Now a few things go together to make this happen. Put some Amrita earned on your armor, Amrita Gauge Edition and or Amrita earned on an amulet if you have it. If you don't have it, maybe living weapon durability or living weapon attack enhancement will be good. Amrita blessing from the Kadama shrine you want, and also a 10% Amrita earned from your prestige titles. Don't forget your prestige titles. On this build I've used those to add Onmyo magic power to make up for putting some of those magic points into heart, and also use them to get 10% extra damage against yokai and humans, as well as strengthen living weapon durability by a whopping 950 points. So prestige points are really useful. I actually respec'd them 3 times to make sure I had those particular perks. So it's pretty good. All in all, I've got 31.5% Amrita earned, plus a further 5.4% when it's yokai, all added to 12.5% extra Amrita gauge charging from Amrita earned. Basically this build is an Amrita machine without the need for Amrita talismans. Speaking of strengthening our living weapon, which I mentioned before, hi-nezumi has another perk called Close Combat Attack Critical of 25%. The first perk on the legendary Mikawara warrior set has the same perk at 30%. But that set is not lightweight, so we don't want the armor. Fortunately, the perk is also available by equipping the Haikuimon Ishimonji Katana and a Yasakani Magatama, which gives us a whopping 67% close combat attack for critical attacks. It should be 65. I think the extra 2% comes from the agility damage bonus, but I'm not 100% on that. But whatever, it's 67%, so that's what it is. So with our critical damage being so high, triggering our living weapon while critical is ideal. That's why I've replaced Steel Talisman from previous builds with the Quick Change Scroll. Quick Change Scroll is honestly brilliant, and I think I've fallen in love with it. That thing lasts forever. I can activate it at the start of some missions and complete the entire mission before it has run out, even after running across a map for multiple minutes. Basically makes it so that if you have your living weapon charges and your scroll activated, not only will you not die permanently, but if you do die, you'll instantly return at maximum critical damage. You know, pop a small spirit stone, pop a scroll, and bam, you're not going to die anytime soon. It's really good like that. But you have to remember to use the scroll if you're not going to activate your living weapon when under 30% critical state by yourself. If you don't, you're going to expect to live and you're going to die. That happened to me a lot as I was getting used to doing this over and over. By the way, you can tell when you're in a critical state easily. That's when your health bar starts flashing red. So if you want to activate manually, keep your eye on your red flashing health bar. Watch how awesome using the scroll to get your critical living weapon going can be when you die. It's great. Where I'd normally have Life Seal, I've added small spirit stones. Like I said before, 1 stone will charge living weapon from 0 to full. It will also recover your living weapon to full. So with those there, if ever you want your living weapon, you've got it instantly. Handy for boss battles, given our non-living weapon state has lower damage than we would have with a different build. Of course, if you're going to farm bosses like a meeting on the other shore or the Two Kings or whatever, you're probably better off whacking on Karajishi for those moments to make your life easier. It's not that you can't do them, I mean obviously you can, and I've done them multiple times with this build to test that, but if you're farming them, then you want to pour through those bosses as quick as you can, and nothing pours out the damage as much as Karajishi, at least for Windstorm on dual swords that I've seen so far. Other than that, this build has the usual stuff. Attack on every armor piece, agility damage bonus A+, because we're wearing light armor. The clan of choice is Honda, to take less damage from full health and to do more skill damage. You could swap Honda for Ishida, which gives living weapon attack enhancement of 10%, or maybe even Date to get more durability on your living weapon, but I think doing so would be a waste. Date gives you living weapon duration, and we don't need that. Ishida gives you no key consumption once you finish living weapon, and I don't think we need that either. Besides, this build takes a little away from Windstorm as a skill, so why take more away is my view. We still want to use the skill with as much damage as we can, because it's still the most powerful dual sword skill there is. Skill wise, there's nothing different than other dual sword builds here. Choose all the passives along the weapon skill trees. Shrike and Windstorm are must-haves, plus any other dual sword skill you personally like to use. Ninjutsu is bare except for Ninja Tool Mastery 3 to get your capacity up so you can carry all those wonderful quick change scrolls. Choose the instant casting Mystic Art to make casting quick change instant. Make sure you grab sneak attack and dashing as always. Magic, you want Weakness Talisman, Sloth Talisman, Awakening, Fire Talismans. I also maxed out Fire Break, Water Break, and Lightning Break 2. These help compensate for the light armor's defense weaknesses. I didn't have enough points to max out Wind Break, but when I get a couple more I probably will. Also grab Pure Mind, the Protection Talisman, Evil Ward, Carnage Talisman, and importantly the Vital Spirit. That typo makes me laugh every time. It's meant to be Vital Spirit, but that's pretty funny. You also want Inanimate Enchantment to extend living weapon use time, and you want to max out Incantation Mastery. In fact, try to max out all of the magic skills I've mentioned. Regarding Fire Talismans, you can also run this build with a dual sword like Shisho. Fire Talismans will override Shisho's earth damage, so that's fine. You'll get more damage with Shisho than you will with Ken. If you want to maximize that, change to attack skill over heart for Shisho. I have heart here on my Shisho, which is basically a legacy roll from a previous heart based build that I haven't yet updated, but skill is where it's at for getting the most out of your dual swords. You could also swap your amulets with fire damage amulets. Ideally any amulet with fire damage, Amrita gauge, Amrita earned, and Yoko close combat damage would be perfect. I haven't been lucky enough to get those exact rolls yet on any one single amulet, but if you have been, all the power to you. As far as your armor goes, it's lighter even than the Justice Ministry set. That means it gives you very low damage protection. That's another reason why Honda is perfect as a clan. You should prioritize also toughness in your prestige points too. Toughness is the key stat for how well you can resist enemies breaking through your defense and hurting you. Without any toughness, it's very easy to be killed. With light armor, toughness is important more than ever. 10 or 20 points of toughness can be the difference between surviving strong attacks or getting instantly killed even when you're blocking. Also, because it's a critical living weapon build, having received damage from attack critical on one of your armor pieces will be a big help. So anyway, I wanted to show you guys this build as it is now. I was planning on respecking and seeing how this build would play out with less points allocated, but given that its strengths are a lightweight build with living weapon crit damage, I don't really see the point of doing that. No matter what level you're at, the increase to your damage output by using crit living weapon will always be the same relative to your level and damage output at the time, so it will always be good enough in that respect. So long as you start your build by increasing your skill and heart ahead of your spirit and magic, enough at least to be able to get the kills you need to charge your Amrita gauge, and I think you should be good. Besides, I don't see anyone using the magic sword early in the game, or later for that matter. I'm only using it here because it exists, not because it's the best. So yeah, I'll play with this build for a bit, but I don't see me doing any more respecking for it at all. With all that said, if you want a god mode build and need to one-shot or even two-shot everything, this build obviously won't make you happy. I typically don't do tanky max damage builds like that though. They're too slow for my liking, and even if they weren't, everyone else is already doing them, so I guess I'd probably just be copying or iterating on their builds, and I don't really want to do that. Still, I might have to do that for one or two builds because I've run out of light armor options, sadly. There really aren't any good light armor options in Nioh. Justice Ministry and this one I'm showing you here are pretty much it. Making builds for them is all about how to make the best of what there is, but what there is isn't much, and what there is really never the best as far as damage goes. Don't get me wrong though, lighter armor builds I've posted are certainly good enough to sail through NG Plus with. I was 170 levels under the final level with my first light armor build when I finished NG Plus easily. I played the entire NG Plus game through with light armor, so that's not an issue. But if you do want to do more than sail through, by that I mean you want a one-shot instead of 2 or 3-shot bosses and whatnot, well, you need to go heavier for that, and there's no way around it. So yep, that's it for another vid, guys. I hope you liked it, and once again, if any of you want the gear I'm wearing in this, just shout out in the comments, and I'll be more than happy to go and drop my Revenant somewhere for you to go and get it and save you that ridiculous grind. Alright, until next time, and bye for now.